welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul. My co-host Justin Baker joining me as much is happening around the NHL after I guess a pretty good All-Star weekend. I can't say I watched any of it. Proudly, actually, I can say I did not watch any of it. Did you watch any of it?
I watched
You loser! No, just kidding. I'm kidding.
I maybe watched a good 10 to 15 minutes of it.
Okay, all right.
And when I say 10 to 15 minutes, I'm talking the skills competition. I didn't watch any of the 3-on-3 stuff.
No, couldn't have even cared less about it. And I was just like, this is a good time to take a little break from feeling like I have to watch hockey a lot, and I'll just do whatever I want with my kid and my wife, who's now 39 weeks pregnant. So we're just kind of sitting around waiting for that. But
snap.
I just have no interest in the All-Star game, and that's okay. I don't mind. I get it. It's great for kids, and it's great. Probably to be there, it would be pretty cool. I would, if somebody said, "Hey, do you want to go to an All-Star game?" There's no way I'd say no. I'd do everything that I could. If the ticket was free, I wouldn't pay for the ticket, but if it was free, I would go.
So here's a story. I actually got waitlisted once to go to an All-Star game. I'm sure I probably told you the story, but
I don't think you have.
Okay, fair. Well, anyways, I'm not sure if this might age me a little bit, but I'm sure you remember the good old Atlanta Thrashers.
No, tell me, is this a team that was in the NHL?
Yeah, they won 2 games.
Okay.
They had a couple players, but yeah. So, anyways, when the All-Star game was going to Atlanta, I can't even remember when it was. But anyway, so I was a young kid, didn't have a ton of money, but you couldn't really buy tickets directly at the time, so I got waitlisted, and then finally I get a call a couple weeks later from a salesperson at the Atlanta Thrashers franchise, and they're basically like, "Hey, we see you were waitlisted, and we want to offer you 2 tickets to the Atlanta All-Star game. Would you be interested in purchasing those today?" I'm like, "Absolutely." And I, again, fully knowing that it's in Atlanta and I would have to drive down there. But they're like, "Oh, but you have to buy 3 other home game tickets as well to go along with that." I'm like, "Oh, fuck you." Yeah. What am I going to do? I live in Detroit. Do you realize who you're calling? Do you know where I'm from? What am I going to do with these? And this was before StubHub and eBay were a big thing for, resale tickets.
Yeah, now it's not a big deal. Okay, whatever. I have to buy 3 other tickets. I'll just sell them.
Right, exactly.
Well, so you almost went to an All-Star. This is the story about how you almost bought tickets to an All-Star game.
Yeah, I will say, though, if it ever comes to Detroit, which I'm kind of surprised it hasn't yet.
I mean, it's coming to Toronto.
Yeah, fuck you.
Well, I just mean it's close. I don't want to go to Toronto.
No, I don't want to. But I'm just saying, if it comes to the Little Caesars Arena, yes. I will definitely try to buy tickets for that.
Okay, we can go to that together if it comes. Yes.
I just don't want to drive 4.5 hours for an All-Star game.
No, I guess I would have been
Maple Leafs game. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's very true. Although I do have a lot of people to stay with, so accommodations are free. That's a good thing. But
there we go. I'm going with you.
Anyways, we'll digress on the All-Star talk. Now that it's over, we can just pretend that it never happened, and the dunk tank is just hopefully permanently in the tank. We don't have to see it again. Bo Horvat signs a new deal with the New York Islanders, 8 times $8.5. Dylan Cousins signs a new deal with a cap hit of $7.1 million over the course of 8 years. He's got a no trade clause in the last 3 years of that deal. And Dylan Strome, 5 times 5 with the Washington Capitals. So some deals that have been made. Oh, and Sonny Milano signs a 3-year, $1.9 million cap hit with the Caps. So some decent deals going around, teams locking up guys. I think it looks like ahead of trade deadline time, so that they know not just for this year, but for next year, how much they can take on, or if they can't take any on at all. I think that it's a smart move by these teams. And before we jump into anything else, because we have talked about Bo Horvat basically every episode since December, let's just do it again. And tell me your reaction to the Bo Horvat 8 times 8.5. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, for one thing, I knew he wasn't going to get more than Matthew Barzal, right? I think that was kind of a given. However, I am a little shocked that it happened before he played a single game with an Islander sweater on. You would think, I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Lou Lamoriello, spending what he spent in this deal, knew he was going to have to get him locked up long term, or else this would look like a complete disaster of a move. However, I just from a Bo Horvat standpoint, I figured, he'd probably want to test the waters. This is going to be really his only opportunity in free agency, and you got to think the demand for goal scoring centers right now, especially 30 plus goals like he's put up right now. You think his demand is high as ever, so why not? But I know the reaction. I know from what I've heard, with Horvat's camp, he basically had identified 5 teams he was going to be interested in going to in free agency, and the Islanders were one of them. So I guess him and his wife are really interested in that New York lifestyle, and clearly the Rangers just didn't have the cap space for him, so maybe that's why they weren't on that list. But here's an interesting. I think that I want to say that Matthew Barzal is from Vancouver. So at least I know he's from BC, right? So I wonder. He's from BC, and Bo Horvat at least lives in BC for 8-9 months out of the year. I wonder if there was some conversation there in passing. Yes, he is from Coquitlam, British Columbia. No idea where that is, but it's in British Columbia. I'm sure that it's somewhere near Vancouver because everyone out there lives near Vancouver. I wonder if that was like, dude, living in New York is amazing. Vancouver's cool, but you get to live in New York for most of the year, and then you just go live wherever you want after that for the in the summer. And I know Horvat's from London, Ontario originally, so I don't know where he lives during the year, but I wonder if that was a conversation between them because shoot, I'm sure they know each other pretty well, and now they're going to be playing together for the next 8 years, which is here's what I'm confused about. Vancouver made an offer to Bo Horvat. Like, I'm assuming it was 8 times 8, and they just wouldn't go any higher. But why? Why weren't we willing to go to 8 times 8.5? Is it really that big of a number to jump? Like, or was Vancouver offering like 7 times 8? I would love to know the details of that because it seems like this is a very reasonable number for Horvat. This is like, I would say on the lower end of what I would have expected him to sign for. So what was the problem? That's what I'm a little confused about. He said he wanted to stay, but their offer wasn't good enough. So what's the deal? Yeah, I mean, so first off, when I hear that, I kind of go back to the Delkovich deal. I remember when he got dealt to Detroit for a 3rd rounder, and basically it was all over the matter of, like you said, $500,000, right? Yeah. Carolina just didn't want to go past 3, and the Detroit, I think, went like 3.6, something like that off the top of my head. And yeah, same situation, right? You wonder for a guy who's your captain, for a guy who's been nothing but, just a consummate leader, ambassador for your team, and just he's played for no other franchise. You think, yeah, okay, we can go up $500,000 to make this guy happy. I mean, especially when you're trying to sell a rebuild or a retool, whatever you want to call it these days, and say, hey, Elias Pettersson, hey, Quinn Hughes, we're gonna keep Bo Horvat here, so at least there's a nice 1-2 punch because center is the hardest position to basically, find qualified players.
Especially a guy who can score goals too.
Right, especially. And so you think that would help not only sell other players in free agency to come there, but also help guys who maybe have no trade clauses to say, you know what, hey, I'll go to Vancouver if I get to play with, Elias Pettersson, or if I get to play with Bo Horvat. I think those guys would be worth centering me, and I think I would succeed as a player. So, as a guy, as someone who just, from an outsider's perspective, I think just looking at this, the only thing I could really think of is why maybe Bo Horvat was looking for more than $8.5 million with, Vancouver versus the Islanders, is I would think that maybe his family had an influence on that. You have to wonder if maybe his wife was like, you know what, I don't want to live in Vancouver. It's cold here all the time. It's, I think Vancouver is a beautiful city, but
and it's also you're talking living on the West Coast, right? Now he's in New York. That's a hop, skip, and a jump to Toronto. It's a quick flight. So family in Ontario, you can get back home a lot easier than you can being in BC.
Absolutely. But and the lifestyle in New York is, it's great, right? I imagine that a lot of people in their mid-20s with a lot of money would probably love to have that kind of lifestyle. So, I'm sure his wife and family were like, hey, let's go to New York. I'd love to be there. Or, like a lot of players go to Miami, right? to play with the Florida Panthers because of lifestyle down there. I know that's why Bobrovsky wanted to go there, and there was talks about other players wanting to go there too, just because the lifestyle is so desirable.
Sure, absolutely, and that's same with Panarin. That was the same deal for him. I think that all of this now that it's settled, right? Like he signed, he's an Islander, and the Canucks have what they have in that deal. They're certainly going to be looking over the standings every now and then to see how far New York falls, to see if are they going to get the first round pick this year? Is it going to fall to next year? And then next year will be this big, like the Islanders can't be bad. Otherwise, they're going to get a lottery pick kind of vibe. So that's certainly something to keep an eye out on. Now, I think all of this has kind of created a scenario with Dylan Larkin and the Red Wings where suddenly we know the number for Larkin. There's now no way Larkin's getting less than 8.5. Not a chance, because I think we put him and Horvat and Barzal to a certain extent in the same camp. And I believe you said Emily Kaplan reported that 8 times 8 from the Red Wings, and Dylan Larkin didn't take it. And as a Red Wings fan, where are you at with this?
Yeah, so let me.
Are you okay?
So I am a little concerned. That's what I'm going to say as a Red Wings fan, because here's what I read from Emily Kaplan, and she basically said that Steve Yzerman has a price in mind that he's willing to pay, and it's not in line with some other number one centers in the league. And he's sticking to that number, right? And so basically Larkin's camp is arguing that what does it cost to replace him? And, obviously now they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yzerman's not willing to budge. And, the one thing, and Emily Kaplan said the one thing I've consistently heard about Yzerman as a general manager is he works slow, he grinds it out. And, the Islanders offered Bo 8.5, and now, obviously they're going to have to, I guess, reconvene. You would imagine now to really come back. And I think Larkin now has an argument, because I do think Larkin, while he might not score the goals that Horvat does, but over the course of his career, the numbers are pretty much the same. And I think Larkin is a better face-off man. I think he's a better two-way player. So, for a guy who was born and raised basically right outside of Detroit and is a Michigan guy, and he's been the captain for his whole entire, basically career since he came in there, it was known that he was going to be the next captain. There was no shocker there.
This is what I wonder about this whole deal. Remember, he signed Stamkos to 2 different deals, a 5-year deal worth $7.5 million. That was back in 2011. And then in 2016 in the summer, everybody thought that maybe Stamkos would go to Toronto or New York, and that he had all these options. And before we even hit July 1, he signs that 8-year, $8.5 million deal. And I'm looking at that and I'm wondering, is Yzerman trying to do this like he did when he was in Florida? Because this is really his first big negotiation. He signed Mantha to an RFA. Like, the biggest UFA he signed is Andrew Kopp, which I'm not going to, that's fine. That's a nice deal, but Andrew Kopp is not Dylan Larkin. He's a second-line center at best, probably a third-line center on a really good team who can play the power play. But is he treating this maybe like he did with Stamkos and being willing to go, well, just if you want to take it all the way to there, then we'll just kind of sit, and here's our offer, and he's going to allow him to mull it over, and he's hoping that he'll sign that last-minute deal and go, no, I don't even need to test free agency. I'll just stay here. You're right.
Yeah, I do think there is a bit of that, being patient, because, listen, I'm sure Yzerman knows that Larkin wants to stay here, right? He's been a hometown guy. He wants to be the captain here. He wants to stay in Detroit. It's where he's from. It's where his family is now, and there's really no reason for him to leave anywhere else other than money, right? And so, when you consider Larkin's production, he's not maybe right at the same level as he's pretty similar to Barzal, but he's not a point per game guy. He's close. Yeah, he's pretty close.
He's close. But he's been a close to a point per game guy on bad teams, right? So where he's been really leaned upon, he's given lots of opportunities. He's the one they're putting in the best situations every time. And I would say that on a really good team, you're probably going to share that with someone else. So what does that mean for his production? And I have to imagine that Yzerman is considering that. Well, what happens when we're really good and you are our second line center. You'll still be our captain, you'll still be our guy, but like maybe in order for us to win, we need a number one center or two number one centers kind of thing, a 1A, 1B. And given those scenarios where maybe he's not going to get every offensive opportunity in those particular moments, what kind of production does he then put up then? That would be, I guess, maybe a question mark that they're asking. And I think they would say, look, you've performed this way on bad teams, but you've never won. So I have to imagine that factors in, right? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And on the flip side, you have to also, imagine that Larkin's camp is sitting there going, well, who are the free agent centers coming up that you can replace him with, right? It's Ryan O'Reilly, and that's about it, right? And do you want Ryan O'Reilly at this point? Probably. Like, Ryan O'Reilly is not going to go and sign with Detroit unless he can't get anyone else to sign him.
Right, and Ryan O'Reilly is basically, in my opinion, I think he's almost looking like Jonathan Toews, where he's a really good third line center.
Yes, that's a great comp. A great comp, yeah.
And so, again, I don't think a guy like Jonathan Toews or Ryan O'Reilly are really going to put up anything more than 30, 40 points, I think, next year. And so, with that in mind, Larkin's camp does have a little bit of leverage there. Now, I will say we found out today that there was another center that just got signed to a deal. And so maybe that gives a little bit more leverage to Steve Yzerman as well, because the number is significantly lower than what I'm hearing the $9 million that Larkin is looking for. And so,
right,
but I mean, long story short, I do hope that this doesn't really boil down to like $500,000, right? If you lose Larkin over $500,000, that would be worrisome. And I have heard too, Emily Kaplan did say that Yzerman wants to try to get it done before the deadline, because I think he will try to deal him if sure, Larkin's not going to sign.
Which makes sense. But, I know you're talking about Dylan Cousins, and yeah, I mean, Cousins has had last year, he had 13 goals, 25 assists in 79 games. This year, he's got 43 points in 49 games. He's having a better year. I mean, this is only his third full season in the league. So I think he's tracking right where you hope he will, but he is not at that Dylan Larkin stage where he's a UFA. You're going to pay more. So I think that Larkin's camp would be looking at that going, look, he's just signed for $7.1 million. He's been in the league for 2.5 years basically, and he got that deal. And look at the production I put up, the consistency that I've provided, and the leadership that I provide at all times. Like, look at this and tell me I'm not worth 20% more than that guy, which would be 8.5, I guess. Would be about 20% more than Cousins. So a 9 to me isn't much of a stretch. But
no, and I don't disagree with that at all. I would gladly give Larkin $9 million, but I think Yzerman wants to hold firm as much as he can at that $8 million point. So
and I get like, okay, I mean, if he's asking for 8 and Larkin's camp's asking for 9, well, I have a really good idea. Go 8.5, and everybody's probably a little upset, but not too much. Like,
yeah,
in the grand scheme of things, that's a small percentage of the cap. The $500,000, that's far less than a percentage, or less than a percentage point of the cap. I think you can figure that one out. Now, I guess I'm guessing maybe Yzerman's going, dude, if you want to win, and this comes out after, I believe it was Brad Marchand said, the reason why we're so good is because everyone took cheap deals. We all are making less to be good. And that's true. I mean, the Bruins don't have anybody other than Matt McAvoy making 9.5. The Bruins don't have anyone making over 7. So, I mean, it's they're definitely in a position to win because of that. They can add pieces, and they've got the cap space to do so, and that is why they're winning. But it's really like his, it's easy. Marchand, when he signed that deal, yeah, I mean, he took a little bit of a pay cut, right? 6.125 in 2017. He probably could have gotten 7.5. So he took a good chunk, but it's, I don't know. It's hard to me to tell, like, demand that people take a salary less. Like, if you want the money, go for the money. And if you're not willing to stay with a team because you want more money, well, then just tell me, if I'm out, just tell me, hey, I want more money and I'm not going to budge. So trade me, and if that's the case, then that is what it is. It just seems like the way Larkin talks, he just wants to be a Red Wing.
Yeah, I agree. But I will tell you, you mentioned Boston, right? And I can tell you, like, there's not a lot of teams up at the top tier of teams that I think are going to have a lot of money to pay a guy like Larkin would he become available, except for a team like Boston. And boy,
Boston
if you're trying
would be
to get
a nice destination for him for sure.
Yeah, if you're trying to get David Pasta re-signed, I mean, that would go a long way to say, hey, we got a long-term plan because we've got Larkin signed. So as a Red Wings fan, I hate that, but man.
Oh boy! But you look out and you go, okay, the Carolina Hurricanes could use another number one center. And Jordan Staal, he's about to not be making $6 million anymore. He'll probably re-sign with the Hurricanes, but for a far cheaper deal. And they have the cap space to boot next year. I wonder if Carolina would be a potential destination for a Larkin, because
they could be.
They're certainly, they would be in the market, and they always seem to be in the market. Although, would they pay him the $9 million? Probably not. So maybe that's a moot point.
Yeah, they've definitely been a cheaper team when it comes to paying out contracts. Although I will say, I do think Carolina's probably going to swing for like a top line winger, right? Somebody who can score goals. I think again that's one thing they've been missing, and Pacioretty would have solved that problem, but that injury doesn't help now. So he'll be lucky to. I don't know if he'll make it back for the playoffs or not. We'll see. But
so now that let's just play this game. Let's assume that Dylan Larkin is going to go bye-bye, that he's gone, and they're going to trade him. What are the three places you think are most likely he gets traded?
Traded, okay. Well, I mean, if we're talking purely rental and not long term,
we can talk both.
Okay, sure. Whatever. Okay, let's talk both. Okay. Well, I mean, again, I think Boston would be a destination. However, I will say the Red Wings will never trade in their own division. I just don't think that's realistic unless they get a king's ransom. So I'm just going to scratch that. But again, too, the other part about this is with that no trade clause, Larkin kind of controls his fate where he goes if he wants to get dealt. However, I don't think he's going to dick around Detroit when it comes to something like that, and he'll basically say, you know what, trade me to a playoff team,
right?
And that'll work for me.
Right.
So when I look at playoff teams or teams that are going to be like right there on the bubble, I would say one team that definitely comes to mind would be the Minnesota Wild. I think they have the cap to squeeze them in this year, and I think they could really use a top-line center. I think they've got some really fantastic wingers, and I could see him with Kaprizov fitting in very nicely together. A third team I could probably see would be the Nashville Predators. I think they're going to make a swing for somebody. Again, whether or not they go for a winger or another center, I have no idea. But I think they're going to try to swing big on some sort of top name player. And then, of course, probably a third destination. I'll just throw this out there, and I don't know if Red Wing fans would like this, just given the history. But the Avs would definitely love to have Larkin play second-line center for them.
That was, it'd be interesting. Do you think that Yzerman would make it? I know Chris McFarland is now the GM of the Avs, not Joe Sakic, but it's Joe Sakic. Joe Sakic and Steve Yzerman making a big deal together. That would be something that 1996 Yzerman and Sakic would tell you they would never do. I wonder how deep those feelings go, but
I think they're okay.
Colorado would certainly be the team that needs him. Like if they got him, all right. Well, we're looking at suddenly they're the favorites again to win the cup. I think because then they replace what they lost in Kadri and a couple other guys. Other destinations that I could see as being realistic as a rental. I still think the Carolina Hurricanes, if they were willing to take on a rental, which they usually aren't, he would be a good fit, and it's out of the division. It would require moving Zucker, but I wonder if the Pittsburgh Penguins would be in on that. The Penguins look a whole lot different with Larkin in the lineup. If you can slot, it doesn't matter. You can put Larkin on the wing if you want, or you could have him as your third center. I know they've got Jeff Carter there too, but I think you could slide Larkin in all over the place. You could move Malkin to the wing and open him up and take away some defensive responsibilities. I think one of those, like either the Capitals, which Yzerman has done a deal, a big deal trading Mantha for Verana. So there is that history together too. I know the Capitals, they've got about $5 million in cap space there, so they could do a short term just for this year as a rental, and it would probably work. But that would be another location where you could go, oh yeah, if they, then you're talking Backstrom and Kuznetsov, and then you add Larkin into that mix. That's a pretty, suddenly you're a little more scared of the Capitals, especially since their goaltending's going pretty well, and they're just kind of humming along. It's like they're just waiting for the playoffs, and that's a dangerous team. I think that's one of the sleeper teams in the Eastern Conference is the Washington Capitals. I think come playoff time, they are a team I would not want to play first round.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. I think if you get a healthy Carlson back and maybe they add another piece on the back end.
We need that. Yeah.
They could be real dangerous, especially with Darcy Kemper. I think he's got something to prove this year. And when it comes to the playoffs, right? Because he was with the Avs team, and I think they kind of discounted what he contributed because of how good they were offensively up front. So
one last team for Dylan Larkin. It's the Calgary Flames.
Ooh,
I think the Calgary Flames, if they're in a position where they feel like they're still going to make the playoffs, which I think a team coached by Darryl Sutter, all he has to do is get in the playoffs, and that's a team you don't want to play. That's a team that can win any series against anyone, because they will grind you into the ground, and it will be probably a boring series, but they're there. But yes, I could see, if they add him, then you're kind of replacing a little bit what you lost, and it puts them in a better position offensively, because then you're adding that spark. It's somebody who can actually drive a line, which they are missing outside of that top line.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I know that they're looking to make a move. So it's throwing Larkin out there now. It's an interesting market again, because man, he'd be a very coveted piece. I would like to say that, hey, Toronto go out and get a Larkin, but I don't see that happening. I think that he'd be a good fit, but I don't know that the Leafs would be willing to give up much. Like as much as another team would be willing to do. Plus, I think they'll probably spend their resources on defense.
Yeah, and you have to imagine with the Leafs, right? I think their price would be a little higher than most other teams, given I don't want to call it a rivalry, but
yeah, but I don't know that matters. If the Red Wings are going to miss the playoffs, I don't think it really matters. Like you wouldn't want to limit yourself. Plus, I mean, if Larkin likes to live, near the area, Toronto would be a great spot. If it was, hey, we'll just trade you to the Leafs, and look, your family can easily make the drive, blah blah blah. There would be that level of comfort of being somewhat close to home. I don't know how willing, a lot of players just won't go to Canada. They won't go play there, and with a no trade clause, that's very possible. I think a huge chunk of players with no trade clauses won't sign and won't go to any Canadian teams. They've got all 7 Canadian tems on their no trade list.
Sure. So let me ask you, as a Leafs fan, let me ask you, I mean, I imagine any kind of trade package for Dylan Larkin is probably going to start with, someone like, Rasmus Sandin or Liljegren.
No,
how willing are you?
I don't think they would be willing to deal either one of them. They're too important to their defense. No. They're playing together. Like, you don't want to break up something that's going well.
I don't blame you. What about a William Nylander? Would you do like a player for player swap?
No, absolutely not. William Nylander is only one of the hottest players in the NHL this year.
I know.
And I think that he's 12th in fantasy points.
Yeah, he's been killing
right now.
For sure.
He's been destroying for me. He's been wonderful, and he's had a lot of multi-goal games. So, I log in and I go, oh shoot, Nylander put up 35 points last night. Where then the average is like 8 points a night for a decent player, and going to putting 35 points up in a night is a wonderful thing when one player outscores the whole other team that you're playing. Yeah, it's nice. Anything else you want to hit on?
Well, let's talk about the Dylan Cousins
yes.
contract, and maybe just a quick reaction to that one, I guess.
Well, for For me, I like what Buffalo's doing because they lock up Tage Thompson, they lock up Dylan Cousins, both to what Thompson's making $42,857 more than Cousins each year. So I guess that's their way of delineating who's number one and number two. I don't know. But I think both those deals, I think the Cousins one is going to be more, he's kind of, he'll move into that, eventually, maybe 2 or 3 years into that deal, you go, wow, that deal's a steal. I think right now it's a little overpriced for Cousins, but not by much. I just, like Tage Thompson, you want to see him prove it. Well, Tage Thompson's proven it. So we'll see if Cousins maybe next year you go, well, that's a steal already. But I think it'll be a couple more years before it's an absolute steal for Cousins. But I like both those deals. I mean, you get your two best players signed for $7.1 million each. I mean, that's fantastic. And for the next 8 years.
Yeah, I think both of these guys are going to look like, well, Cousins' deal's only for 7 years, but
it was 7.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you got both these guys locked up for at least 7 years, and I think, moving forward with this team, they're gonna both look like steals. I think, in the next year. Tage Thompson's deal, I already think looks like a steal, but we're going to be looking back at these deals. I think both of them and kind of looking like I think Boston or Buffalo could be like the next Boston Bruins, where they've got guys signed to, especially when the cap goes up here over the next couple of years. You're going to look at both these deals, and I think you're going to be like, wow, this has got the making of like a Boston Bruins team where they've just got guys under, reasonable contracts that are, taking a little bit less money because they want to succeed, they want to win, right? And I think right now that's going to be a great thing because Jeff Skinner is taking too much money, for what he's producing, and so at least over the next 4 seasons, why Jeff Skinner still signed, these are going to look like bargains and really pay dividends. Now, I will say Skinner has looked very good next to Tage Thompson, so maybe if you can get that same level of production over these last 4 years, this contract's going to look pretty decent.
Yep.
But, I mean, hey, you got Alex Tuch locked up for, 3 more seasons after this, and you've got...
Who's been fantastic, by the way.
Yeah, he's been great. I think he's one of those heart and soul kind of players that's really just, you're going to, look back at this guy and be like, you know what, he could be potential captain material for this team.
Yeah.
Should Okposo not re-sign.
Yeah, I mean, I think my guess is that Okposo, if I'm the Sabres, am I kind of trying to move on from Okposo? I think I probably am at this point.
I mean, if he's willing to take $1 or $2 million, play a third, fourth line role for me, I'm okay with keeping him around. I think he's been fine, and I think what he brings in that locker room and to that team, and besides Jeff Skinner and Okposo, there's nobody over 30 years old on this team. So
it's true, they're a very young team. Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you do need some of that leadership still, and you want to help guide those guys like Samuelson, Dahlin, and Tage Thompson and Cousins, and point them in the right direction. So I think he's worth keeping around, but it's got to be for $1 or $2 million. Really, it's got to be for the bare minimum, in my opinion.
Yeah. Agreed. And plus, I mean, he's made so much more money than he ever should have that he should feel pretty glad about that. The Eastern Conference playoff race has suddenly heated up like none other. We finally have a playoff race after Christmas for the first time in like 3 years. I feel like we have a multi-team playoff race. You've got the Pittsburgh Penguins at 57 points and playing 49 games. They've got 4 games in hand on the Islanders, who are tied with them at 57 points. 1 game in hand on the Sabres with 56 points. And again, 4 games in hand on the Panthers at 56 points. So 1 point separates 4 teams. And I know Pittsburgh has played the fewest games out of those teams, but they also are the one team, I guess them and the Islanders, that they both have been kind of struggling in their last 10. I'm wondering, who do you have making the playoffs here? Who's going to make it coming in? And also, it's worth stating, the Washington Capitals, who the Penguins have 4 games in hand on, have 60 points. So it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility to look at the Sabres and go, hey, you got to win 2 of your next 3 games and you're tied with the Capitals in points. So the Capitals are not safe either. Right, absolutely. And the thing I love best is I think the Islanders picked the right time to go after a guy like Bo Horvat, because they're so close in those playoff standings that now they're going to put heat on all these other teams. And hopefully that equates to us getting to see a more,
I guess, exciting pre-trade deadline, deal happen, because
Right.
I would assume that maybe Buffalo might want to reward their younger guys and go out and make a move for somebody. Pittsburgh, they could definitely use somebody. Maybe one of these other teams make another big move here pretty soon. But I'll tell you what, watching Florida last night, I watched about half of that game and just watched them put a thrashing on Tampa Bay. And boy, if they can keep playing like that, and if Borowski can steady himself in net, this is going to be a very exciting race. But to answer your question, if I had to pick two teams right now, I think I would probably pick. I think I would probably go with Buffalo to get in. I don't know why.
And they're really the only team on this list that's over 500 away, and the only team that's under 500 at home.
Right.
I guess Washington is one game above 500 away, but in terms of those four teams that are kind of fighting for that bottom spot, Buffalo's been fantastic away from home. If they can figure it out at home, they're 11-13-2 at home. If you can bring that up a little bit, suddenly you're in a great position to strike here. And
yeah,
it seems as though they're peaking at the right time, doesn't it?
It really does. And you know what? They give me the warm, fuzzy feelings. I mean, when I look at this team, I just want them to succeed. I want them to play well, and I would love to see a time when we have Buffalo, Toronto, and Detroit all in the playoffs, because to me that's just a trifecta rivalry that I would love to watch.
Well, and Buffalo would play Boston in the first round if they grab that last playoff spot, and that has some. I believe the classic Mayday call. I believe it was the Boston Bruins that the Sabres beat in that series.
Yeah, you might be right. And so Buffalo is a team, though, I think can still go out. I would suspect them to make a play on a goaltender here. So if they can get a little bit better goaltending, shore up that defense a little bit, I think they've got enough skill up front with Tage Thompson and Cousins. They would be fun to watch in the playoffs. I don't think they would go very far, but I think they would just be fun to watch. But second team, if I had to pick, I haven't seen enough of Horvat and Barzal yet to pick the Islanders, so I'm going to keep them out. Washington, I don't have a lot of faith in them. I agree with you, though. I think if they get in, they're scary. But with no John Carlson right now, and I think
they're hurting.
All these other teams having played less games than them, I think I'm going to discount them. I'm going to probably put in Pittsburgh, because I can never count out Crosby and Malkin when they're playing. And once they get Tristan
but you
Jarry
can count out Ovechkin.
Yeah. So here's the thing: he basically just sits there and sits at the top of the circle and scores, right? I mean, he's still a heart and soul guy, but the rest of that team,
I'm going to let him know you said that.
Please do. To me, the rest of that team, I just don't have a lot of faith in. Outside of Ovechkin and Backstrom, I haven't seen enough of him yet, coming back from injury yet.
See, that's why hey, Larkin would be a great fit, because I think that he could, Backstrom may never be Backstrom, at least maybe not this season.
Sure.
It's hard coming back in February or January, whenever you come back. It's hard to come back in the middle of a year, especially as an older guy. Like, you just don't get that same timing back. Because you're jumping into the middle of the season, you're jumping into a massive playoff race. That's a tough time to come back. And to add a guy like Larkin could really take the pressure off of Backstrom. I mean, I know you don't want to see Larkin moved at all. You'd like to see him just re-sign, but boy, if he has to go somewhere, go play with Alex Ovechkin for a few minutes, that would be kind of fun. For my picks, I think I'm sticking with Washington and Pittsburgh.
Okay.
I don't think anyone's going to catch them. I think that Washington will keep themselves afloat. They're still scoring goals, and it's not as if they're not scoring goals the way they used to, but they can still win games, I think, and they're doing very well in regulation. I mean, 26 of their 27 games won in regulation or overtime. Only one shootout win. Same with Pittsburgh, only one shootout win there too. So I like the way that they're playing. I like that they're getting it done in regulation a lot of times. I think that's important. And based off of what I've seen outside of injuries, they're still a really good team. So we'll see how long Carlson's actually out. I think it's another couple weeks probably that John Carlson's out. So the sooner you get him back, the better. Now, if he's out for a ridiculous amount of time, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was skating a week ago, so I mean, he didn't play, but he's starting to skate, right? So I mean, he's got to be close. I mean, he got hit in the face with the puck. That blows, but it should. Man, it's tough. I mean, he got hit in the face with a puck in December, so obviously it's bad. You wouldn't just miss this much time if it wasn't really bad, but you got to think that those bones in his face will heal soon. I mean, it's been almost 8 weeks. That's a pretty long amount of time to let those bones heal. So maybe he comes back with a cage.
Yeah,
I know I would. After getting hit in the face with a puck, I probably would have. I would have a cage on probably all the time. I think that a full cage or a full visor is coming. I think in the next. By 2030, I think it'll be a mandatory, like, just wear the face mask or a full visor. I think it's coming. They do it already at every other level. And you get to the NHL and you get to take off the bottom part of your face. You might as well just keep it on there and keep your smile. That's what I say.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on that one, right? They do it everywhere else. And I mean,
you grow up playing that way. It shouldn't be that bad. Right.
And I mean, honestly, all it's going to take is like a face injury to a big name player like Connor McDavid, and the league will change it instantly.
Well, that's what I mean. John Carlson's a pretty big name player in that market, and he's one of the best defensemen in the NHL, and he's out because he got hit in the face with a puck. I mean, if he had a cage on, problem solved. It wouldn't have even been an issue. Probably wouldn't have even missed the rest of the game. I mean, it does suck to take a puck off that mask, no matter what. it definitely, your ears will be ringing for a couple days, but you can put up with that.
Yeah, I've been there. Yep. Not at 80 miles an hour, 90 miles an hour like some of these guys can shoot, but
I can shoot that fast.
Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, I mean, even
I can shoot like 80. On my big clappers, I could hit 80 before.
I mean, you can rip it. That's for sure. I will say though, also too, like you got to imagine for the full face mask, guys getting checked into boards, those face injuries that can happen. Broken cheekbones and stuff. Man, most of that would be avoided too.
Yep. I mean, I'd be pushing for it as a whenever that next CBA comes up, just say, hey, we want new players coming in. Just keep the face mask.
Well, the Players Association just hired a new guy, a new boss.
Yes, they did.
The Department of Labor's head guy from the Biden administration is coming in. So
yeah. He from what I read, Marty Walsh. From what I read, he was also the mayor of Boston from 2014 to 2021.
Yep.
So. The Boston Bruins are going to get special attention. But he was passed up for chief of staff for Biden, so he left.
Oh, nice.
That's what I can't remember who it was. I think that was someone on The Athletic reported that. So that's kind of interesting. But I feel like that's a way more fun position, to be honest. Like, yeah, you could be chief of staff or a president. I mean, probably not too many jobs that have more cred, but you're going to be doing it for like 2 years, maybe less. Like guys, they don't have the same chief of staff the whole time. Like usually you leave. So you got to think this job is going to be probably his until he doesn't want to do it anymore. Yeah. And he'll be the next guy on the next negotiation, which I believe is up in 3 years. I think we've got 3 years left in this one till 2025, 26, I think is last year.
Sounds about right.
So he'll be working to work things for the players. And honestly, I feel like from a player standpoint and from an ownership standpoint, to say, hey, we'll make our guys have to wear face masks, like starting rookies, if you give us this, and what owner is going to go, well, yeah, like, hey, Washington, you lost $1.5 million paying a guy who can't play for you because he doesn't have to wear a face mask. That's a pretty a huge money saver, especially, I mean, guys are getting hurt all the time. They're like, injuries are definitely up because the game's so fast. Yeah. And what better way to avoid some of these injuries than to just wear something that protects your freaking face, you idiot. That's where I stand on that.
Okay, clearly.
Don Cherry doesn't. I think he would disagree with me. He would prefer if all players didn't wear a helmet because wearing a helmet is not tough. Not tough enough. No. I don't mean to put words in Grapes' mouth.
But
what's he doing now?
Don Cherry, he's just on Twitter.
Does he have a podcast or something? Is he on Twitter? Does he actually tweet, or is it just like his grandson tweeting under his pseudonym?
Yeah, who knows? That's a good question, actually.
Okay. Well, any last thoughts before we jet out of here?
No, none whatsoever. Except just maybe next time we talk, you'll have a newborn. So.
That is true. Yes, the due date is February the 15th, so it's very possible that we, just if there's not a show for like a few extra days, forgive me. I just had a fucking child, so right. Don't get mad. Don't tweet at us that we're slacking. Although it does mean that we're slacking, but it means that you're slacking. You got to put out an episode by yourself.
So I've got to pick up the slack. I got it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Or get your wife, get her in there, and you guys just talk about hockey and see what she knows.
Yeah, she just figured out that there's 3 periods, not quarters.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's, it's funny because my wife, like, she's super college athlete, softball player, played field hockey and won all sorts of awards, but she does not really like to watch sports that much. She's like, nah, I used to play it all the time. So I actually used to do it. I don't need to watch people play. Like, okay, well, thanks for shoving that in my ass, but like, I'll just bend over now. Thank you. But yeah, I like to watch sports, and she liked to play sports, but can't play sports right now. So, because she's pregnant. Yep. Not advisable to go play sports when you're that pregnant. It doesn't work out well. Try
debatable.
Try playing. Maybe she'd be good at goalie. She's got an extra bump out there. She could turn sideways.
So she could be a curler. She'd probably be pretty good at that. You don't have to do much, when you're pregnant. Just slide the rock.
Just slide the rock, yeah. Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to bend over at that stage of the game. Easy. All right. Well, that's our show. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk. Justin, enjoy the rest of your evening. To our listeners, enjoy all the games coming up. Whatever day it is that you're listening to this, we will be back very soon. We'll continue following all the trade deadline stuff as we lead up to that date in March. And we're like a month out. So get your popcorn ready because it has already begun. We'll talk to you guys soon.